Welcome into Just Build It. The premise is really simple. AI has dramatically lowered the barrier to building software, but if everyone can build it, what actually changes? And I'm really glad today to be joined by LinkedIn legend James Raybould. He has been experimenting across the board with AI tools, built, I think the latest one was Profiler, James, that just went viral across the LinkedIn community. And I think what's most impressive is he's not a traditional engineer. He would self describe, I believe, as non technical, but you're just building anyway. And I think that might be where the world is headed. So, James, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, it's fun. I like just build it. That's kind of my 2026 tattoo.
There you go.
Very aligned.
Off to a strong start. I guess just to kick things off, was there a moment where you kind of switched from AI is useful to I should actually just start building? And how did you kind of create or change
Yeah,
that
I think there's
mindset?
been a couple of phases. I was obviously using it. I say I was a power user of it in the sort of 23, 24 phase. When we were all oh, ChatGPT is cool, all that stuff. But much more in the it's helping me write my content. It's helping me give me some input. I'm talking to ChatGPT, as a kind of counselor assistant while I'm driving to places. So I think I was always very into it. Then I joined Turing late 24 to build out their AI implementation business. And so I think I got to see how we're doing it at scale for companies. But I think, I don't remember exactly even. So I just left. So obviously it's March right now. I just left. And so I think at some point, it's actually, I remember October, November of last year, we were making this big push for building prototypes, which is kind of obvious. You're trying to demonstrate, show, don't tell, etc. And I realized I was becoming one of those quote execs who tells everyone we should be building prototypes, but I haven't really used Replit, and I haven't really used Bolt or Lovable or any of these tools. And so I both because it was relevant to my job, and also as the job was starting to wind down, I began to have a bit more free time. I just jumped in. And so I think it was one of those things where I initially built some really simple, I built myself a workout tracker, and it took, I don't know, an hour or two. It probably, it took 20 minutes to get something fairly good. It took an hour or two for me to, customize it in a way. And then from there, I think I discovered Claude Code in October, November. Like obviously I knew of it and was very aware of its capabilities, but I think you have that moment where again there's like abstract and there's kind of there's real, and I think when you first build something and your reaction is, oh, that would have taken me or a team of engineers a week or two to build that, and I just built it in an hour, a minute. I mean, we're not quite at a minute yet, but we're not that far away. And then I think it just, as the job was slightly winding down, as basically there was this perfect combination of the job was beginning to wind down and Claude Code's capabilities were asymptotically increasing. And for the last several months, I've been spending, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 6 hours a day just building stuff. Some for my kids, some professional, some just kind of playing around. And I think the closer you get to quote the metal, the closer you just see this. And I think it's one thing to read the blog post or even like that's great. Hopefully this is helpful for all of you. But I promise you, what's more helpful is just actually starting to do it. And so I'm happy to give some tips and tricks and what I've done along the way, of course. But that all pales in comparison to just starting to write the instructions or even like dictate the instructions even better. I use Whisperflow, big fan of Whisperflow. So I talk, Claude Code builds. That's kind of my day right now. So
Very cool. And I mean, it's kind of impressive just how much you've been able to do in a short amount of time. I mean, you shared, I think, Profiler, you said it was like 1,500 messages or something along those lines. I guess what surprised you the most about like the process itself versus maybe like the fantasy that people have about what vibe coding actually entails?
that it's way easier than you think. way, way, way easier. And so I think also, I mean, I use Claude Code. Actually, this morning I started using Codex 2, and Codex 2 is equally good or similarly good. And I haven't used it enough to have a strong opinion, but I started using it this morning because I'm going to do a project that requires it. And so, uh, there's definitely elements of wanting to throw things at the screen and wanting to get very frustrated. It's not perfect, but almost every rabbit hole or problem you have, you just ask it to solve it. Does that make sense? And so, I do a lot of screenshotting. I'm having to say the things that are hard. So the things that are easy are getting the idea built. That's absolutely, I have to go into more detail. Things that are hard are hooking up to Superbase or hooking up to Vercel or hooking up to these things again, where the first couple of times you have to take API keys from Claude, or you have to take a environment variable. I don't know what this thing is, but I know it's what you need to connect the different things together. And so again, I'm obviously learning as it goes, but you just follow instructions. I just screenshot like, what do I do now? And it says do this, and I do it again. And so you need some patience, to be clear. It's not as though it's not all kind of one shot where in one go it does the whole thing. But I've yet to find where we couldn't solve it. Occasionally you have to quote hit escape and say, what the hell are you doing? Like last night I was doing something with in one of my windows, and I literally had to say, what the hell are you doing? And it's like sort of starts apologizing. It's been just kind of going around in circles and looping for like an hour. So, but I think all the same skills that you would have as a manager or a product manager or a director, or whatever the title you want to use,
Yeah.
they're all kind of the same, except with AI, you can just be brutally blunt and you can do it whenever you want. And it
Yeah.
just makes everything so much easier and faster.
Totally. I mean, I can't agree enough. I feel like the other day I was building a wedding planning app in Claude Code and was shocked by how easily it was able to navigate some of the real nuances of things that I was requesting. I think actually, to your point, the hardest part was just like even learning how to hook it up to Supabase and some of the right um, the right API keys. And once you got that underway, it was, you know, auto correcting, it was figuring out the errors, etc. So the building process is kind of mind
Well, and
blowing.
to your point, I think it's also one where I'm now, I don't know, I'd say month, I don't know, 4 or 5 of doing this in a well called a hardcore way. And it just gets way, way easier. I mean, some of it could be the system's getting better, but it's just, I kind of know what to do each time. And obviously, it already has my keys and so, once you hook it all up to GitHub, which again sounds incredibly scary. I know it sounds scary. It's not. It's just like for any of you who've used Excel before, it's like a VLOOKUP between, a couple different things. All to me, GitHub is like, it just stores it all. And now if I want to go from one computer to another, it all just kind of matches there. So again, it sounds like, oh my God, I have repos. It sounds so scary. It's not. It's just like stitching it all together. And again, I don't click around. I'm not technical. I've been a product manager before, so I'm technical-ish, but I've never written a line of code in my life. I've never written a line of SQL in my life either. Claude Code or Codex or any of these different tools, like they can do all these things almost effortlessly.
Totally. I mean, it's so I think, it's pretty clear from your actions and words that, building is both fun and more easy than it's ever been before. I guess what to you makes something worth building? I guess is prioritization now the real bottleneck moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, also we're in this fun phase where, at some point, obviously I'm doing this most things I'm building are for me or for my kids. There are now a few things I'll release fairly soon that will be, more publicly facing. We have to think about, throttling and scale and all of again, which I think is trickier. But it's really just a question of what friction are you feeling, or what, for example, last week, I think it was Thursday, my 8-year-old girl, I'm driving the kids to school, which I do every day, which is fun. And she's complaining that her outfit doesn't match. She's like looking at her outfit, she's 8. She's wearing shorts and a t-shirt or something. She's like, my outfit doesn't match. And my mind immediately went to Clueless, the film, hopefully many of you have seen it, where Alicia Silverstone's character creates like a wardrobe picker. And so then over the weekend, I just built a order picker. So basically, what I do is, she has to take pictures, which takes some time. But over time, I would imagine actually, if I want to do this for real, as you're buying things from Amazon or Banana Republic, yeah, I'm not a fashion post. I mean, wherever you're buying it from, you would probably could take the images there, and then you can stitch them together, and you can see what it looks like. And then I built a kind of a fun voice on top of it where it looks at the two and gives you a judgment, along the lines of, looking amazing, those two match great, to, looks awful. And so again, and that took probably 2 or 3 hours, maybe a little longer to make it kind of good. You start getting into, design and fonts and that kind of stuff. But again, I think the other thing is once you do it for a little while, you begin to have almost like a system for doing it. So, I've probably built, I don't know, 10, 15 apps at this point. At least half of them have the same design system. So I basically say, go look at this one. And that's now the fonts you're going to use and the colors you're going to use. Obviously for a human designer, that still takes a lot of time. Like, well, where are the Figma files? For when it's all code, Claude Code just looks at the repo. It's like, cool, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, it's the equivalent. I used to joke with when I was in the product. Yeah, can you just copy and paste the code over? And actually, like in this case, you basically can copy and paste the code over, if that makes sense. And so I think over, again, some apps I want to look different, but a lot of them I kind of want to have a same look and feel for me. And it's just once you've done it once or twice, all those decisions. I mean, back to wedding planning. There's a lot of minute decisions you have to make, which will deal with the big ones. Once you made the big ones, it gets way easier. And the same thing where, so once I've done my, I use Claude Code and I use Vercel and I use Superbase, I use a few. Then that's kind of my, those are the tools I use.
Yeah.
And then it's the question of like, cool, different use case tools. And what's fun now is occasionally it's like different use case, different tools where I have to, this morning I was playing around with, I built a meditation app. It took like 10 minutes. It was very simple, like a breathing app. And then my kids like it when they get kind of stressed out. Sometimes do you know what 4-7-8 breathing is? Is where you sort of like in 2, 3, 4, hold through 7, and then out through 8. So sometimes when my kids are really stressed out, I will just count. I will literally, I will become their meditation person, and we'll just do the breathing. So I went on, my Mac and just recorded myself going, in 2, 3, 4, hold through 7, and then, so I've never recorded. I'm working with Codex on. I recorded it, and the in was 4.3 seconds. So I'm like, great. You need to, just find some, cut some, etc. And now I basically have a meditation app that took less than an hour to build, exactly what I want, where it's my voice for the kids to use when the next time next time I'm not around to do that. But and it took 5 minutes to get a V1, an hour to get a V2. And obviously, I could spend the next 10 hours making it, quote, amazing. But I probably won't, because I'll go on to working on something more interesting and more difficult. So
totally. And it's, 80/20, right? It's like totally serviceable. It does the trick. It does what it needs to, and it allows you to be almost in like two places at once, because you're actively supporting, your kids.
Actually, I thought you were going a different direction. Is the frustration, and meant in a good way, with AI right now is it obviously doesn't build immediately. It does take a few minutes. So basically, so usually what I'm doing is I'm usually building 2 or 3 different things at a time, because I have 2 or 3 different windows of Claude Code, or more than 2 or 3 windows going. Because for any of you who haven't done it, it's a little bit like you put in the instruction, and it takes a little while. It could be 30 seconds, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, whatever it takes. So essentially, it's kind of a game like spinning plates, where as long as you keep each of them spinning. By the way, you don't have to. You can go to sleep. But in general, my general MO is I think ideally it's 2. It goes up to 4 different things going at a time. And yeah, it's probably bad for all the context switching, multitasking stuff, but this stuff isn't mission critical. And so it's okay if I'm doing my Alicia Silverstone closet thing, and I'm building a writing app over here, and I'm building something over here, and It's all fun, and so I think it's okay to have like two or three things going at once.
Yeah. And I mean, it definitely helps also with the prioritization discussion that we are talking about earlier, right? Is the bottleneck is maybe loosened a little bit because you're just able to do a lot more at one time. You can have those three plates in the air and you don't have to pick and choose, maybe. Ultimately.
Well, also, and I think this is an important one. I think my timing, like I mentioned, was obviously with the job was starting to wind down a little bit, but also just the apps, the models are getting so much more powerful, and so
Yeah.
you can link to the. I'm sure you've seen the chart. It's done by meter. It's like it basically shows how long a task AI can do in human time. So 3 or 4 years ago when ChatGPT 3 came out or 3.5 came out, it's like, oh, it can do something that lasts a couple seconds. It's like a quick response, or maybe it's like a short vignette. Now we're up to, I think, 10 or 12 hours. So basically, AI can consistently do what takes a human 10 to 12 hours. And it's doubling every 4 months at this point. So I think the reason I'm sure everyone listening to this is like hearing more and more of like, oh my God, the world is changing because suddenly the duration of task that AI can take on is becoming longer. Where, to your point, I may give a prompt and I'll wait 10 hours, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And I'm not sure I'm quote good enough to figure out how to say, just go for 10 hours and just do this. But I know the good engineers are. And so essentially
Yeah.
you're reaching a point where you go to bed, you basically give instructions for, to two or three things. You wake up in the morning and miraculously hard things are built. And, easy things can get built in minutes. Hard things probably still take hours or, low days, but it's just a question of how many plates can you have spinning. I think, give it 6 more months and it'll be great. Here's what I want. And maybe it'll take a day or two, but then you'll have, like an ERP system built, or you'll have a CRM built, whatever it might be. And not I'm saying those are like, you probably want to still go with, an Oracle or SAP for ERP, but the general concepts become, if AI can do something that's, multi-threaded, multi-agentic, blah, 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 all the buzzwords, suddenly it's not just building a meditation app. It could be, I'm right now building this kind of one agent to rule them all, which is it'll do email, text, relationship building, writing, like basically almost everything in my life. And that's harder, but it's still going to take, weeks to build, not take, months or years to build.
Yeah. It's just different kind of timeline
Well, yeah,
completely.
you just, I mean, I think, the simple way of thinking about it is like the more things you're stitching together, the more complicated it's going to be because the more things have to break and the more quote context you need to be giving it. So it's easier to meditation app, very, very simple, just great, breathe, etc. I've been pleasantly surprised about how easy it is to connect to WhatsApp or iMessage, or and some things are hard. Like obviously I used to work at LinkedIn as did you, and LinkedIn for the right reasons is pretty locked down. But you can download your data, or you can do things like just copy an entire profile. Like go to the page, Control A, Control C. It's pretty hacky. But now with agents, they can kind of do it for you. And so I'm not endorsing like massive scraping at scale, but in the idea of like how to get something. You and I are meeting with someone, pulling their profile and then like running it through a bunch of stuff couldn't be easier at this point. And it doesn't. It's the kind of thing where manual meeting preparation it's kind of annoying and people don't always do it. With AI, there's just no excuse not to have it all synced together and just have the insights come to you.
Makes sense. I guess just taking a step back here, I think a lot of the people who would listen to this maybe are non-technical, haven't ventured into this kind of building mindset, haven't experienced it. You kind of alluded to this a little bit in terms of your process and how you think about going from like a blank page to something real. But I guess someone who's doing this for the first time, how would you kind of describe it to them, and maybe what does that like first hour look like that really gets them going beyond just just doing it and starting to.
Yeah, I think there's two phases. First phase is you can use ChatGPT or Claude, not Claude Code, not Code. You can just use whatever you use. Maybe use Gemini. They're all good. And you would just explain, hey, I'm about to build X. Can you write me a spec to hand off to this tool? And so you'll chat back and forth. And you'll say, see, let's do it live. What's an idea? What do you want to build? We'll literally sort of just talk through how we might describe it live. So
Yeah, I mean, you could even just start something super simple like a to-do list app where you're kind of checking off things that you have to do both work and personally as well.
great. So we have so we go to Claude. I use Claude, but so we go to Claude. Say, hey, I'm building a to-do list app, and you start describing. I need to be able to enter information from a mobile device, from a desktop, whatever, web. I need it to be able to do these things. Maybe I need to have it tag it. You can come up with what you want. And the nice thing about it is, it will have suggestions. You'll say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and it'll say, okay, cool. And usually what happens is it'll then say, all right, you need to make 3 decisions. Here's 3 things I need to know before I can write the spec. And it'll, you ask the questions. It'll say the to-do list of it, who knows, but you get the idea. And then maybe, do you need to input with voice? Do you need to be able to stitch together like subtasks? Again, I'm making it up live, but you can imagine those are the things they might ask. Great. You'll say yes to voice, no to subtasks, etc. It'll say great. About 90 seconds later, maybe it's 3 minutes at the most, you'll have your spec. And so, it's called a markdown file. Usually it sounds scary, all it is just like a written document. And then you'll take that markdown file and then you'll give it to whatever tool of choice. And so I think, for me, I like Replit as kind of a one-stop shop. So the way to think about it is like Claude Coach, like the one I tend to use the most, that's just helping you build. You still have to do all the, what database are you using, what hosting service are you using, whatever it might be. So I may have to connect 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different things together. Or you may have to, get into Google APIs and that kind of stuff again. So that's like the fancier, harder stuff. What's nice about Replit, by the way, I'm sure Bulk's the same and Lovable's probably the same. I just haven't used them as much. Is once you have your spec, you just give it to the tool, and it's going to do all the things for you. It'll host it for you. It'll connect to tokens if you need it from other places. And so basically, it's more one-stop shop. And by the way, it might be equally powerful. I don't know. It's something where once you find what works for you, and in my case, it's Claude Code. And I think for most people, I use LinkedIn and Twitter as my sort of guide. Most people use Claude Code at this point. But again, that's like the 201 and the 301. The 101 is just use the LLM to give you your spec, hand it to Replit, literally just paste it in, and then chat with it. And then within minutes, like that to-do list, I bet we could build a to-do app in 15 minutes. That would be probably pretty good. Is it be perfect? Yeah. No, can I forward my email into the to-do list and have it probably not. Could we build that? For sure. That's just a more complicated use case, if that makes sense. And then you just follow instructions. And again, occasionally things go wrong and things get annoying, but you just chat with the app and it builds it. And again, I think you can start. It's probably a good idea to start with something fairly basic. But once you build something basic, build something way fancier. I mean, I think it's all the same. I think back to what you need to have an idea. You just explain your idea.
Yeah,
That's it.
It's learning by doing, honestly. Like once you kind of get that first iteration done, everything is way simpler. You've done it
Also,
before.
I think you realize AI today, AI will be good at everything very soon. But, for example, you mentioned this profile app where essentially you can put your LinkedIn profile through it and it gives you a review and how good your profile is. AI is unbelievable at reviewing things. You're creating a document for your boss, a big presentation at work, whatever it might be. There's never been an easier way of just building an app that says, great, we're going to build an evaluator, we're going to build a reviewer. And this document needs to be really clear on the so what. It needs to be really clearly written and not have jargon. I make it up. You can figure out what you want your evaluation to be. That'll take you minutes, like literally minutes. Great, put the document through it. It'll tell you how you're doing, and then it'll identify, can you show me the 3 places where I need to make changes? Those types of things couldn't be easier. Not everything in AI, creating imagery and videos is still way, way better than it was before, but it still has some imperfections. Writing and reviewing and evaluation stuff, it's already way, way beyond like kind of prime time. It's already much better than humans can do at scale.
Yeah, totally agree with that assessment. And I think, you know, even just if you played around with it for 10, 15 minutes, you'd realize, come to the same realization. One thing you mentioned that I just want to double click on, you kind of talk through kind of problem solving, right? Like there's sometimes errors will come up and you kind of chat through them, etc. I guess two-part question here is one, has there ever been a time when you needed to start over, or how do you kind of learn when to push through, when to take a step back and reset, and how do you kind of navigate that fine balance, I guess, between like magic of building with AI and the maddening kind of cycles that maybe it will take up
I
front?
think it takes I think it takes some time where I think, I've gotten better where what often happens is AI is sort of built to try and please you. And so sometimes if it starts making quote mistakes or having a struggle, it'll start suggesting really bad, simple suggestions. Like I'll give you an example. I was working with a colleague and we were hooking up her Claude Code to Spotify. By the way, it's really fun to play with Spotify's APIs because you can like create custom playlists and all that kind of stuff like in like seconds, literally seconds. And it was struggling, and so someone's like, "How about we just use your keys and your stuff?" And then I'm like, "But I need to be connected to her account." So basically, I know this is possible. Search the web and figure it out. So sometimes you actually need to just like, you need to be a firm hand sometimes because think of AI as like this the most brilliant intern that ever existed, but it's still an intern, and so they still actually need to know exactly how to operate in your work environment, etc. And so you actually do need to be willing to say that's wrong or that looks like crap, and occasionally I'll swear, but yeah, I try not to. And so I think you just but usually I have yet to have to do a complete reset. And by the way, it could be, I'm sure if I gave my code to an engineer, they'd look at it and like be laughing, but maybe not. Does that make sense? And also for my purposes, if I'm building something for myself, as long as it runs and it works, I don't really care under the surface. So I do think there's probably what I feel like I'm now, experts too strong, but at least quite good at is you give me an idea, I can build you something for small scale use in minutes or hours. What I don't yet know, and again, I have some background from like the work at Turing and the work at LinkedIn, but that's like a different type of thing. Okay, cool. Now we're building that same thing for production scale, where we have millions of people hitting it, and we no downtime, and 5 nines redundancy, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the same stuff's going to apply. That's why I think if you're doing it on real scale, you just need to have you can have the quote hackery people like me, but you just need to have some actual engineers along the way. But I think that will also change over time. Where I think it'll get easier. I think the whole I think right now, how like as of March, like AI slop is like a whole thing, and then so like vibe coding, not scaling, is like a thing. But if you remember, 6 fingers on people's hands was a thing. Nations were a thing. Like it's going to be a temporary. I don't know if it's a month, I don't know if it's a year, but like the whole sort of even like the phrase vibe coding. I hate the phrase. I just call it building with AI because I think vibe coding makes it sound like it's sort of like it's so light, but Claude Code, the Claude team just built Cowork in 10 days using Claude Code. Was that vibe coding? If that was vibe coding, sure, we're all vibe coding. But I think it's a phrase that's sort of taken on a more pejorative angle. Real engineers don't vibe code, but actually, as we all know, in the next year or two, not all code, but the majority of code will get written by these same tools that you and I have access to. It'll figure out how to make things more scalable. And, it'll just, again, it's not, today, I'm sure I still need an engineer, to be clear. And there's wonderful engineers out there. In 2 or 3 years' time, I'm going to bet that the models not only become, 1,000 times more performant, but the security, reliability, vulnerability stuff comes along with it too.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of reading my mind right now because I think where I was going to go next was just to hear a little bit about your perspective on big picture implications of this. Just because, as some might know, you also write a a lot. You've written Blueprints, which has a lot of really interesting frameworks and elements of strategy. You were a former Bain consultant, and you have instilled in me the importance of the so what that comes with so many of the projects that we've done together. And so, I guess from a big picture perspective, I guess what do you think the best builders in this new AI era will need to have? Are they going to be engineers? Are they going to be people with strong taste? Are they going to be folks who are able to understand the customer more deeply? What, I guess, what's your hypothesis on who thrives in this next generation?
Do is I might think about separating into how are you more efficient at work as slightly different from how do you build tools. Like for example, I could build an AI email tool right now. I could build it. I'm sure I could do it, really. But Superhuman's really quite good. And so, there's certain things where you're going to need someone or some, someone's, and in their case, dozens or hundreds of people at Superhuman living and breathing that problem. And so I don't think that suddenly in 3 years' time, I won't use any packaged software. I use Asana for task management. You and I could build a replacement for Asana, but I kind of like it, and I know it's not going to go down. Same thing. I use Superhuman for email. I could build something that's different, but I probably don't need to. So I think it's one of those things where, to answer your question, I think the taste is still. I feel fortunate because my background has been pretty broad. I was in a sales org, I was in a marketing org, I was in a product org, I've been a GM. It's like I'm sort of dangerous enough that I'm not a designer by training, but when I see a design from AI, I can say that looks like crap because of this. The CTA doesn't make any sense, or so I think people who have enough opinions, you can call it taste, you can call it judgment, you can just call it opinions too. I think is a requirement. But then I don't know. I do think I think I think the people who make their workflows better and kind of optimize their life with AI are very different. There, I think I'll bet on the kind of generalists, systems thinkers, logical people. I don't think you need to have that much of a technical background. That said, to build the companies, obviously you're a VC, to build a winning product company, as I'm sure you're seeing, a disproportionate number of them are hardcore engineers. Like almost all the Cursor founders, Arvin Nick Gleen, and you go through all of them. It's a little less of the smart business dude with a lot of experience. Like we're like, no, no, these people built Google search. These people have crazy IQ points and winning math Olympiads and all that kind of stuff. And so I think I would almost bifurcate the how to make your life effective technical skills, optional, beneficial but optional. Taste, judgment, just like being frustrated with friction. My whole life right now is just like looking at my life, and be like, oh, this is annoying, but AI can solve that. Can't solve everything, but it can solve most things, which is a little different from, you and I are now founding a company. You and I are founding a task management company. Do list. I kind of want someone who is living and breathing the actual underlying tech and trying to figure out what will be able to do in 2 years. And that's why I do think so I almost like, I think the engineer, I would invest in the engineers more than I would invest in the non-engineers
Yeah.
for kind of making companies more efficient, making your life more efficient. I'd invest more in the kind of generalists. So,
Okay. That makes sense. And I think one thing that you've also talked a lot about is just like, or alluded to there, is like the AI forward mindset, I guess, both personal and professional, is just going to become so important. It's about how you kind of intersperse that with your day to day and make yourself more streamlined, more efficient. I guess as you think about that, what does that mean to you? Like, what are the traits, and how do people showcase kind of like their AI nativity? Because I'm just speaking from my perspective. I think whether you're seeing portfolio companies in my portfolio start to post jobs, or whether people are talking about it on LinkedIn, um, there's always this kind of dialogue about what does being AI native truly mean. And obviously, you are living and breathing this every day. I'm curious what that means to you.
I think to a certain degree, it's kind of you're the name of this show is like, I think you're defaulting to building things. And so I think, you're frustrated because you're getting too many emails that are useless. Great. Just build a system to improve that. You're frustrated because you're overwhelmed with your Slack messages. Great. Build something that gets you, just the so what. So um, I do think it's kind of a being willing to invest a little time. Again, it's faster to reply to emails than it is to build an email system. But as you know, if I spend 4 hours building an email system, I'm now 4 hours behind an email, which is annoying. But then I get the benefit for the next, 4 years, whatever you want to call it. And so I think it's people who I think pull out of the kind of fire hose of stuff. And as we know, a lot of work is stuff. It's people. It's following up on people things. It's making sure you have. Blah, blah. It's a lot of it's like moving information around. Almost, there's not that much that you do. And I don't mean you. I guess it could be you, Glenn, or it could be you, the royal you. That is actually really hard. There's a lot of stuff you do in a day that's just kind of keeping trains on tracks. All that stuff is just crying out for some level of automation. Again, I think 2 years ago that stuff was hard. You probably would have had to hire, legit engineers. Now it's just with MCP and all those different protocols. It's just like connect Claude to your email, connect Claude to your Slack, connect Claude to your Notion. By the way, I mean, just to geek out for a little bit, the Notion Claude integration is so good for all my writing. I'm building a custom app right now, but I'm building it because like I'm so in love with the notions, like where the writing lives, but like all the inputs coming from Claude, it's just they sync up together, and the whole, I got annoyed like copy and pasting. Oh, now make copy like why do that? And so again, I think so, but more and more all the different MCP servers are getting spun up. You don't do that anymore. Like it's all seamless with just a little bit of effort, a little bit of configuration up front, a little bit of thinking up front. All of a sudden you have, and so I think you got to, it's hard, by the way. And I found this way easier, as you mentioned at the beginning. This has been way easier once my touring job began to wind down slightly. There's like a direct correlation between hours in my day available and this. So again, anyone who has a 75-hour a week job, for me to tell you, oh yeah, between 11 and 1 every night, you should be vibe coding, or between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, you should be like that. That's a hard thing. It's very hard to like pull out of the 75 hours to find the 15 hours to do this regularly. But I think some of the folks who are doing it are, oh, I invest 15, I get back, the equivalent of 25 soon. And then you just rinse and repeat. And if every week you're doing 15 hours a week of building stuff to make your life better in the future, it's gonna add up really, really quickly.
Totally. And there's also even a few tools, I mean, that you've mentioned, but there's also ways to kind of abstract away even parts of that building process. Like I think we both use, shout out to Invest portfolio company Relay.
Yep.
Jacob and team are building like a next gen AI and native Zapier, and something that's super simple to cut out a lot of the quote unquote actual build of those efficiencies that you're gaining. But it's thinking outside the box and even going to a tool like that and making a change that enables you to be more efficient, as opposed to just kind of doing the same thing over and over again.
Or it's using Whisperflow for dictation. It's using Granola for notes. And obviously, once you have notes, then you can put it. Now you have more context. I mean, the way that I always think about it is, you and I can have a vaguely intelligent conversation because we have, decades of information in our brain and pattern recognition, etc. Well, if I can just give AI all the same context, it's got way more capacity than I do. It's got way better memory than I do. It's got way better everything than I do. And so it's just, how do you design your life so that, great, the granola notes, where are they going? They just built nice integration to Notion. It's great. Now I can go straight into Notion, or such. It's almost like, one my favorite example right now of AI is, I'm sure you've seen, Read AI, Reid Hoffman AI. It's like he's basically created you can chat with, and he, as you know, he has different versions of Reid. Like I can chat with like 18-year-old Reid, and 18-year-old Reid only has the context he would have had age 18. And then there's, founding LinkedIn read, 2003 read, or a 2004 read where he's like just raising the Series A for LinkedIn. And there's obviously today's read. The reason he can do that is obviously A, he has the resources, but B, he's documented his whole life. He's been blogging for decades. He's been writing books for decades. He's been on Twitter and LinkedIn for decades. And so I think in some ways, one of the things I think I've always been kind of a archiver. I have like 30,000 Notion notes, but like, and now I'm discovering it's a huge asset because essentially my whole life is digital, and all AI needs to be helpful is the information to feed it. And so now on my day to day, everything is recorded. Like everything I have, I try to then have feedback into AI because you're just making this. It's like a virtuous cycle. Like the more information it has, the more context it has, the better, the more value it brings. That's right. It just keeps reinforcing itself. And so I think back to like how you kind of design your life. You need the inputs. You need the inputs to constantly be feeding in, and then the more it can just happen automatically, the less kind of manual work, the less kind of copy and pasting. I think again, in some ways, I haven't thought this before. It's a new idea, but I kind of like it. The amount of copy and pasting I do should be zero. Like there's almost nothing at this point. Like anything, if I'm literally copying, and I do a fair amount of copying and pasting, and you probably do a fair amount of copying and pasting. That's a flow that's like incredibly unnecessary. And I think with agents soon, like just do this, and like it'll just do it for you.
Yeah, it's the future. I really appreciate the time today, James. One last question, just as we kind of wrap things up. I think you have such great takes on kind of where AI is headed, and obviously you're using it pretty robustly today. Maybe you have an answer for this, maybe you don't, but what's one belief you think about building an AI that most smart people or most people in tech are still getting wrong to this day?
I think human in the loop is accurate, but way overweights the human. So I think this idea of like we're going to build everything, but you'll be humans, and there are flows where you want to have like approvals and verification. I'm not saying, but like in general, AI is already way smarter than you are, way smarter. They're like, oh, it's not there yet, so therefore I should be doing most of the writing. I'll have like AI touch it up. No, no, no. AI should be doing most of the writing. In fact, you should be giving it to AI at the end, and almost always, and this is back to context. If you've given enough context to the I promise you, more often than not, its version will be better than yours. I occasionally am debating with the Claude and stuff like I go with their take at least 2/3 of the time. Not because so it takes like judgment, like no, yours is better. And so I think there's sort of a sense that AI is there as like a sort of a helper or an enabler or an assistant. I think we're already at the point where I trust AI's judgment way more than I trust my own on most things. Not anything. Obviously, there's like where do you take yours and where do you take theirs. But in general, it's just it's I think you've seen all the same quotes. If AI, if the models didn't progress at all, AI as it is today will already completely transform things. Obviously, back to those curves we discussed before, it's going to be more than that. Which I think people overestimate human abilities relative to AI already. It's already exponentially better than us at most things. And if you just go where the puck is going, I think we're like a year or two away from why would I ever overrule the AI on anything? Because if I've given it the context and I've given it the judgment, it's just kind of me with like a exoskeleton that's 10,000 times more powerful than I am. So I think back to your question, I think we vastly overestimate human intelligence relative to where AI is already.
And to your point too, I think, people sometimes fail to recognize that this is, the worst the models are ever going to be. They're just going to continue to get better and better. And soon enough, they'll very clearly be better than the human intelligence aspect or human thought process on that front. So I agree completely. And it'll be very interesting just to see how many humans are in the loop moving forward. So James, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but this was a real Really, really great conversation. I mean, perfect first conversation for Just Build It, and a great way to kind of just understand the builder mindset, understand how the barrier to building is collapsing, and folks that are listening should just do it. Get out there, build something, and learn from it. So, thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate your time.
Of course, my friend.